let's pretend to be on page 3, if you would. And we discussed yesterday what the meaning of the word pulse was. Do you all remember that?
Yeah, it's the beat.
That's sometimes correct.
It's what you tap your foot to.
It's what you tap your foot to.
It's the bottom number, isn't it? Or the top number?
The bottom number actually does determine a lot of the times whether it is the pulse equals the beat or the pulse does not. In fact, almost always when the bottom number is 4, such as 2, 4, 3, 4, 4, 4, 6, 4, 8, 4, however far, it is almost always the pulse is equal to the beat. That has another nickname for it. When the pulse equals the beat, we call that simple meter. How simple could that be? Simple meter is when the pulse equals the beat. Okay? When the pulse does not equal the beat, we call that compound meter. Okay? Those things I can't remember if they're on the first test, but they certainly do show up in the middle of the final chapter, or the final test, which is Music Theory Jeopardy! So you need to know what simple and compound meter are. They also, as we were just talking before, if the bottom number happens to be 8, more often than not, it is compound meter. In other words, the pulse and the beat are not the same. Okay? Let me give you some sort of an idea about how all of the meters actually look and feel. That's not a ringtone I recognize. It's going away. I either just turned it off or I've run out of battery. One of the two. So you probably won't be able to call me for a little while until I get that plugged in. All right. The easiest one to do is 2/4 meter, and remember yesterday when I said the first one always gets more of an accent like that? That's 2/4 time. Remind me what's... Was that me again?
Yeah.
Dang. All right. Remind me, what is it called when we hammer the first beat of every measure without being told by the composer or arranger to do so? It does start with an A, whoever started that. What? A Gajic accent, that's correct. Is it still written up there?
No, I haven't.
You have it written in. A lot of times, this tells you how forgetful I'm getting. A lot of times I will write answers to the test when we're reviewing. I'll write the answers up on the board or have somebody write them, and then when we take the test I forget to erase the board. So it happens a lot. Just so happens that somebody needed our board, so they erased the Gajic accent, but that's okay. Then there is, I'm not going to do these in an exact order because what would 2/2 be? Would it be any different than 2/4? The way we're doing it now, let me make it that way. The way we're doing it now, would it be any different? No, it'd still be a strong beat and a weak beat. A strong beat and a weak beat. The difference is these would be quarter notes. What would these be?
Half note.
These would be half notes, that's right. And it might sound exactly the same. Okay? Now let's get into a triple meter. By the way, that was duple meter, and you can find an example of duple meter on the midway through the page 3. Let's do a couple of triple meters. 3/4, would look like this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And what does that remind you of? Does that remind you of anything? Triple meter is often also a, did somebody say waltz? Super. A waltz. Do you all know how to waltz? Not a clue. I might step off camera just for a second because I really don't need for people to see me waltz. But the waltz is set up so that the meter that we use with the accents and everything all are the same. In other words, it's easy to waltz, obviously, if they're playing a waltz, because you step in that exact same pattern. Large step, small step, small step, large step, small step, small step, large step, small step, small step. It's exactly the way that works there. Now, not all 3/4s are waltzes, but pretty much all waltzes are 3s. All right, 3/4. All right. Then there could be a 3/8. Would that be any different? Again, it's a triple meter, so it's going to always have a strong downbeat and 2 sort of fluffy beats. The only difference is these, of course, up here are quarters, and these down here are 1/8 notes. Okay? We'll go ahead and get into a quadruple now, which would be 4/4. Now, Mr. Duckworth, who actually wrote this book, does not do anything extra with the 3rd beat. He just says there is 1 very large beat and then 3 fluffy beats. But yesterday, when we got to this point, I think I forgot what I like to do is remind you. It's really funny looking at my navel. There. If you think way back to, well, and you don't have to think that far back, you may have just listened to it yesterday, but the oldest of rock and roll that you know, think about 60s and even 50s rock and roll, 60s. They all had pretty much the same drum beat. If you were a drummer back in the 50s, all you had to do was be able to do this with the bass drum. Bom, 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 bom. In fact, that's how you learned how to play the set. You learned that first, bom, 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 and then when you really got courageous, you would add the hi-hat or something, or maybe the snare drum in between. Bom, chick, bom, bom, chick, bom, chick, bom. But that bass drum beat stayed the same from song to song and from era to era, from 50s rock and roll to 60s rock and roll, continuous, all right? And so that 1 and 3 is sort of, well, the signature, I should say, of 4/4 time is that it's got a strong 1 and a strong 3, okay? All right, now, sometimes we decide that, whoops, sorry, I'm backwards today. I'm having closet dyslexia. Okay, that's often used in place of 4/4. Do we know what the C actually stands for? Common time. The reason we call 4/4 common time is that it is the most common. In fact, when you are learning how to, starting an instrument in 5th grade, we go pages and pages where everything's in 4/4, and then finally, sort of as an afterthought, they say, oh, by the way, here's a 3/4, here's how you count that. But we swim in 4/4 forever. Then after you get out of 5th and 6th grade and you go to middle school band, you don't read books anymore, you start reading actual music, but band music for the middle school is often, it's safer if you write it in 4/4. So the common time comes in pretty handy. Now the common time equals 4/4 and people get this confused a lot, even good, knowledgeable musicians get that mixed up. If common time is 4/4, what is cut time? 2/2 is correct. Many people think it is 2/4. But it is not 2/4. In fact, it would not mathematically work out if one were 4/4 and the other was 2/4. This is supposed to be just twice as fast as this. Okay? So what happens in cut time is that there are 4 quarters to a measure. There is absolutely nothing different about cut time except that we just group them into half notes instead of 4 quarters. There would be still 4 quarters in cut time, right? We just only count 2 of them, or we only direct 2 of them. Okay? So you might imagine that if it's in common time, it is slow enough for the conductor to conduct 4 without having any sort of muscle spasm. If it goes so fast, if its tempo is so fast that it's difficult to understand it, we don't really feel that sorry for the conductors, but we do feel sorry for the people playing. If I have to go so fast that you really can't tell where 3 is, we say, let's make it easier. Let's go to cut time, and we'll go 1, 2, 1, 2, and the quarter notes are going by twice as fast. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2, and it does make things easier for the conductor, but it also makes it easier for the people who are trying to read it. All right, now let's talk about, and here's where I don't care so much for the order that this book is in. We're going to come along to a page, maybe 15 pages from now, that talks about the compound rhythms, and I always feel like we're kind of on a roll and we need something to compare it to. So this is a good time, in my opinion, to introduce the compound rhythms as well, so that you have something to compare it to. Okay? So we know all of this. The pulse equals the beat, right? All right. Well, I'm going to see how far over here I can go without running out of the picture. Let's talk about 6/8 first. We kind of talked about 6/8 yesterday for the moment. It was the first example of a compound rhythm, or a pulse that is not equal to the beat. The 8 on the bottom tells us what again? What kind of note gets 1, right? An 8th note. And the top number tells us we can cram 6 of them into a measure. 6 8th notes per measure. But we don't count or direct that many. We do it this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We make, this is called the ictus right here. I don't know who named that. I don't know what I would have named it, but it wouldn't have been ictus. But right where I stop and move to another direction is where all the beats are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right? So that really looks like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? Now, 9/8. Why do I keep putting it above there? You might know. 9/8. How do you suppose 9/8 would go? How many pulses would be in 9/8?
3.
3, that's right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. As in 1, 2, 3, 4, that's too big, sorry. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right? You can see how it's different than 3/4. Both of them have 3 pulses. But if I were to divide each beat note, which is a quarter note, in 3/4, it would be 1 and 2 and 3, and it would just be a division of 2/8, wouldn't it? In this case over here, I'm dividing it into 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2, or triplets if you suggest. All right? Now let's do 12/8. I cannot remember to hit the lines to save my soul. I don't really know what I'm on. I just found the pills in the hall. How many pulses are there in 12/8? 4, that's correct. And one might think, well, what's the difference between 12/8 and 4/4? Well, 4/4, again, if I would divide the pulse note, it would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. In other words, I just said 8 notes right there. So in other words, 4/4 divides into 8. 12/8, of course, divides into 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very good. Now, do you know some music that goes like that? Does anybody know of a style of music that you've heard before that is in 12/8?
That goes like what?
That goes like 12/8? In fact, there is a whole style named for it. Let me turn this thing on. Okay. Somebody has robbed the chord again. Oh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The whole doo-wop era was almost all 12/8. If you appreciate the doo-wop era, not everybody does.
That's a good area.
There's a little bit of a problem with the doo-wop era and 12/8. At that time, not composers, but arrangers who made piano music for people to play at home were somewhat afraid that you might not buy their music if it said 12/8 on it, because a lot of people don't go too much farther than middle school or high school music, and that therefore they really haven't been exposed to 12/8. So they did this thing that I really hope it made them a lot of money, because I really thought it was something very condemnable. But maybe they did save themselves a lot of hassle not trying to train the rest of the world how to play in 12/8. What they did, and actually still do, if you go down to Glenn's Music, and by the way, do go down to Glenn's Music. We still don't, he's keeping the bass in another place. Yes?
I think it's been 10 minutes.
Oh, thank you.